James, hello. How are we?
I'm doing good, man.
Had just had an ice bath, haven't we?
Oh, do you know something? I've been in New York for a couple of days, and it's the first time in years that I've gone 2 days without doing ice bath. So I was there for 6 days, and I'm so happy that I did one this morning, if I'm honest.
So what are the benefits that you feel personally? Because I want to make a lot of today's conversation about the potential, your opinion on the potential bastardization of recovery in the modern world, especially on social media to some degree. But
yeah.
for ice baths, for you personally, what is the value that you see in them?
So everyone talks about the physicality of it, the benefits, but it's the mindset. Seriously, the biggest thing with me, because I used to work for British Athletics, and funny enough, you interviewed a guy called Guy Lameth. So I used to treat him a long time ago. So it's a small world. When I worked for British Athletics, so at the Olympics, during the Olympics, my dad passed away. And I didn't really grieve really well. So I was looking after all my family members with the loss of my dad. So going into the ice a couple of times, I was able to grieve, basically, and just be free from all that tension, because we don't understand when we're stressed and we have that chronic stress, constantly through the fight and flight, it goes to our tissues, so it makes our muscles tight. It makes us feel always tight, feeling that that's a new norm. Because as we age, we just assume that it's normal to feel sluggish, to feel tired, and we don't bother taking care of ourselves because we're worried about paying our mortgages off. We're worried about things at work. So the main benefit was me to just focus on me for once and just surrender to the ice and just be head on with what I'm dealing with. So I've come to that terms now about my dad passing away. So I'm at peace. Of course, I still think about it, but I've gone through that process of grieving effectively.
And I assume along the way, you've made that a habit that then has other downstream effects that go beyond just processing the grief of your dad. I assume there's now just it's a day-to-day calibration point for you, I guess.
Yeah, and you've used the word calibration very well, because I used to be calibrated by others, but I calibrate myself through doing ice and other rituals during the day. I'm into vision boards, so I always put all my dreams, even if people think that it's hard to achieve. But one of the things that I achieved was writing the book, because I had that light bulb moment. I was in the ice bath, and all of a sudden I'm saying, well, I should write a book because I want to help as many people as possible. Then you start to think of other stuff, that I want to work with a movie star, or I want to work with some Premiership players. So you put that in your mindset and it happens.
What's on your vision board right now?
Oh, so I've got two in the room here. One is to lose weight because I'm into the ice baths, the saunas and all that stuff. But for some reason, I didn't get into the habit of working out, because I just assumed, because I used to be a 100-meter runner a long time ago. So I used to train 2 or 3 hours daily. So I'm learning now that just doing 20 minutes a day, half an hour is enough, because that's better than not doing nothing. But on my vision board, I just want to make more time for my family, as well as just being better at my job, because I work 7 days a week, and I would never change that. But it's not long 7 days a week. It might just be 1 or 2 patients a day, because in the nature of my work, because I work in sports, so when you look after these athletes, you have to watch the games, and that's what gives me a passion to just see them go from nothing to achieving something great.
Yep. Yeah, you've been referred to as the Sherlock Holmes of body pain diagnosis. Was that something you came up with yourself, or was that given to you?
That was given to me by a football player, because there were so many times when someone's gone to see an expert, or a doctor has said that you won't ever get back to how you were as an athlete, or this injury, you should stop running, you should stop doing something that you love. And the way how I approach things, so I look at the whole person. So I look at the lifestyle, I look at the anatomy, the physiology, but I try and solve that case. Because in most occasions, people have a reductionist approach. They don't actually look to what is actually going on. So that's how that name came forward.
You've weeded out the mysteries. So who's Watson? Who's Watson? Have you got I guess family member, right hand man, right hand woman?
Watson is the patient, because I'm just trying to unlock the understanding, because the patients are the best experts of their own body, and many people don't realise that. They just want somebody with a big lab coat or a doctor to say that you've got this issue. But once you understand the language of pain, the different layers of pain, and how you can express yourself to the right person to get the right answers, that's when mountains will be moved and you'll fully recover. And then when you fully recover, you'll be more body aware and you do things that are healthy for your body. So
am I right in thinking your new book, Body, is published today?
Yes, it's the paperback version, which is crazy.
That is very exciting.
So it's a new cover, because it was green, like the Hulk, and now it's Bruce Banner now. But it's so effective, and I love the cover because it's a bestseller. So on this new cover, it says it's a bestseller, which I'm really proud of.
Yeah, rightly so. And I'm pleased that we're having this conversation today because the timing is impeccable.
I know, right?
Essentially, the aim of the book is to equip people with the toolbox to better understand their own bodies and their own pain through your experience and perspective. So from a top line point of view, I know you've worked with some very specialist athletes, but you're trying to now communicate these lessons learned to the masses so that people can be better informed about themselves. In the modern world, what are the big picture things that you're aiming to tackle with the book? Are there some consistent patterns in people you want to tackle? Are there some specific things that people are getting wrong? Is there myth busting? What are you aiming to achieve with the book? So first of all, it's a book for like everybody. So I go from different areas in your body, from your head down to your toes. So the biggest thing is people have low back pain. People have neck pain. And that's due to our postures every day. People are sat at a desk. People are looking at their phones, looking down, shoulders rolled in. So I'm trying to tell them, do something about it now before crisis happens, being in a lot of pain where it stops you from being at work. Because many people don't look at the clues. So it can be a slight ache in your shoulder or in your back, and we choose to ignore it. So I'm telling the reader, start now. If you feel that ache, the body's trying to tell you something, that you need to do something different. Okay. And from my point of view, I feel like I've always, by accident, I guess, managed a lot of the componentry of what can cause day-to-day pain through resistance training. Nice. And from a professional sport point of view, how much of a role has corrective exercise resistance training played in alleviating some of the challenges that people have faced with their day-to-day pain? Because I guess there's some constant, I mean, looking at a professional sports setting and applying it to the masses is potentially a big gap to bridge. But I think with a lot of things, doing the basics well and executing them consistently over time, as with all things, is probably a core component of how the average person can learn from professional athletes. Would I be right in saying that? I think yes and no. We are all athletes in a way, because we have to perform at our jobs. So if you're sat down at a desk for like 8 hours, you're like a Formula One car, and you need to have pit stops during the day. But going back to the elite level, to answer your question, is that I love drills. And every drills will be different for different sports. And I think to evolve, because I love to take an athlete to the next level. And I feel when you have drills, you need to make it unique for that athlete. So you need to watch how they play, how they move, and then kind of have that as a drill, but slow it down. So you're training your central nervous system. And the fact that you are doing a resistive training, you are training or prepping your body to do what you love doing. And I feel that even that athletes at the elite level lose that sight, that they just go through the motions of doing a drill. But you should be breaking it down, saying, how can I get better? Is there a certain turn or certain movement in a game that I can be a lot faster or more efficient? You know, and you should try and put that in terms of training, in terms of a warm-up, in terms of a cool-down. That's why I love my job, because it's never the same thing. Even with me treating, the hands-on therapy is a lot different. And I tend just, so we're all the same, even athletes, because you would find that athletes at a club or in a team, they just lie on the bed and they get their physio to do whatever.
But the reason why they hire me as an external person is that I tell them or give them a crib sheet saying that, okay, I've seen a pattern in your body. If you've only got 5 minutes with a physio, this is what you should be working on. So it's effective. So you're not wasting the physio's time or your time. And that's what makes it like amazing, because everyone's journey is different. Everyone's body's different.
So for anyone that's maybe suffered with residual pain day to day, or prohibitive pain, shall we say, because like you said at the start, I mean, my take on injury is, because I train across a variety of sports, I feel very privileged that if I have a niggle somewhere, I can pivot into something else and apply my ambitious performance metric driven mind to a slightly different focus point that doesn't aggravate the injury site. But I think people that are recreational athletes or otherwise have a tendency to have a sore knee and then just go, well, I shouldn't be moving at all. I should just stop dead in my tracks and just catastrophize the situation. So I guess if we're sort of really spreading this out across the general population, if we look at what's standard, which is, I guess, a 9-to-5 job, working in an office, maybe quite a sedentary lifestyle, people might supplement that outside of that, of course. But if anyone is feeling those early signs of ache and pain, what are the things that they can start doing from tomorrow onwards that will help them, A, better understand their body, and I guess B, take action on improving it for the long term? Take that action now, like you said.
Yeah, I think there's loads of answers in that question. I think the biggest thing, if you feel pain doing a function, for example, if your knee hurts going to like do something in a gym, my answer is to break it down. So if it's a sharp pain, because there's a difference between pain and discomfort. If something is really sharp and every time you're doing that motion of movement, it's getting worse and worse, that's a red flag. If it's a discomfort and you're aware of it, but you can still go through the motions of the task in the gym or every form of movement that you are doing, you can still do it, right? And I think that's key. And many people don't understand that. Even athletes at an elite level do not understand that you can still do an activity, because the worst thing that you can do is to not do nothing, you know? And it's not just about the physical side, it's the mindset, because there's so many athletes that would go through a state of depression or feeling low, or like they'll be so overwhelmed in their mind thinking, am I ever going to get back to what I love doing? But the biggest component of training is that we need to get treatment. And many people would say, I can't afford treatment, or if I go and pay my money here, is the person going to be very, very, very good? So in my book, I do teach people self-management treatment plans that you can do first. I do teach people how to diagnose your own issue. So if you've got a knee issue, I would tell you if it's enough that you need to go and see a doctor for advice or test it, so you can make sure that there's no ligament damage, any cartilage damage, or anything that will make it worse. But I think the biggest thing is that we update our phones. We like have our cars to be looked at, or our teeth to be looked at, but we don't actually look at our bodies. We don't get someone to give us a quick check. And it's going back to that thing that I mentioned earlier. We wait for a crisis to happen. So when we get a sniff of pain, we need to go and get it assessed, you know, or place our hands on the site of pain, because we all think that if we place our hands on our knee or on our back, that it's going to make it worse. But in most occasions, it doesn't. So
we need MOTs, so to speak.
100%. 100%.
So is there a sort of criteria or a checklist that you'd work through in general terms to MOT somebody's body, or is it all individual case specific in your world?
I just think that I want to create a culture where people just go and get a massage, or they go and find a therapist that has different skill sets, so massage, acupuncture, cupping, all of the above. So just basically go and get a check and then find a local therapist that can say, oh, that your quad's a bit tight. That might be the reason why you've had lower back pain for a long, long time. So you're on that quest to like find out, okay, I want to feel good in my body all the time. And this therapist is giving me some advice and giving me some takeaways of exercises and stretches that you can do.
What do you think about the ever-increasing tendency for people to focus on the grain of sand at the top of the pyramid, the 1%, when they're probably not nailing the foundations of the pyramid, or the 99%, shall we say.
Yeah.
I think there's ice baths, great example. The physiology of them, the physical benefits. I think a lot of people are believing that they can work themselves to the bone with their training and then get in an ice bath and that'll solve the problem, when the problem is that they're doing too much training in the first place and therefore under recovering.
Yeah.
So I think, what is your take on the modern world of recovery? And do you think it's misunderstood?
Yes, I think it is. You have to build your house upon a rock. So you get, like in every sport or any discipline, you have to get the fundamentals right. And then once you've got that, you can pass to the next role, you know. But I think people overthink things, and that's what leads people to being injured. A very good example, people that want to start doing a marathon, they go straight into it. They go straight into a high intensity training, or they think that, oh, I've missed training this week because I got injured, so that means I need to double the amount of runs I'm doing the following week. And I've seen a pattern over the years is that the best thing for these people that have no experience running, you need to learn the techniques of running, because everyone seems to heel strikes still, instead of using the balls of their feet or going on their toes. And the biggest thing is that everyone's tense in the neck and the shoulders when they run. They just need to make sure that they're moving efficiently. They aren't trying to overwork certain areas of their body. So when I work with people that have never run, I tell them the biggest part of training is the recovery side that you need. So if you've got a big run ahead, make sure that you stretch out well, that your body is fully recovered. Especially when you start to do the race of the marathon, just make sure that you have an Epsom salt bath, or do something kind for your body to prep yourself to that run. But many people do not do that. Many people do not stretch. Many people don't have a massage gun, because there's so many gadgets out there now. It's so easy for us now. Because many people will say, oh, I don't have that much time to like warm up, so I'm just going to go straight into the run because I've got to be at work at this time. So it's trying to educate people, be kind to your body, do all the prep work first, and then move forwards. Or get a coach, get somebody, because there's so much advice online now. Get some advice if you want to go straight into a new skill, because if you don't, you're going to get to that crisis of being in pain.
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of people really do make the mistake of forgetting that running is a skill. Yeah. Whilst it's a basic locomotive pattern, it is very much a skill in and of itself, in the same way that whilst you've ran before, we've all ran for the most part, it will be unfamiliar, it will be dormant. If you, in the same way, a bench press is a simple movement pattern. However, you probably didn't bench press when you were 8 years old, yeah, which means that it's a less familiar skill. So therefore, to be able to develop your skill, you need to give it time. And we'd all respect the learning process and the technique of the bench press, but a lot of people do not respect the fact that running isn't just lace up your shoes and start swinging your legs around. There's a little bit more to it than that in terms of efficiency and making sure that you're not aggravating any certain points or anything like that. And I think in the modern world, whether social media has contributed to it or not, I think a lot of people focus on the complexities before they nail the basics.
100%.
And I think that's where the vast majority of people, like you've said, should start from the ground upwards and better understand the direction they're moving, rather than, for example, thinking, right, I'm going to start training for this. I'm going to spend 800 quid in an ice bath, 600 quid in a massage gun. I'm going to do this, and this will keep me going, and I can just train all the time I want. If they don't understand the inputs and the progressive volume, the progressive intensity, then you can't sort of hack your way out of inefficiency. And I think that's where a lot of people are getting it wrong in the modern world. And then not utilizing recovery as a tool in their arsenal, but almost hoping that it's going to be the thing that brings them back from the proverbial dead. So with athletes, what are the things that you are, given that they've got high work output, huge work capacity, huge skill demand, huge cognitive demand? I know you've worked with a variety of different sports. Do you have a process for assessing what help they need and how you're going to support them? Or is it a case-by-case basis?
As I said, everyone is different and unique in their own way. So the first time when I take on an athlete, I want them to do a vision board. So I want to see what their dreams are. A very good example, I'm not sure if you're a big football fan.
Moderately.
Yep.
I'll be honest. My favourite team in the world right now are Wrexham AFC because the Disney documentary grabbed me by the balls. But that's where my knowledge is. Everything else is quite superficial, I'll admit.
Oh, bless you. Yeah. So I like to take on an athlete at a young age because they've got good habits and they're innocent. It's so difficult to pick up an athlete that's 28 because you have to backtrack and think about all of the bad things that they've been doing. So one good example was Michael Elise. Like, he's a very talented player. So I started treating him when he was 14 years of age. And with the team around him, he had an S&C coach. He had me as a therapist. He had a mind coach. He had people doing the right drills, all these things. So I'm not shocked that he's doing well now. So he's moved to Bayern Munich. And he's just recently had a debut at France, and it's so good to see him do very, very well. And I just wish him the best. And the reason why I'm saying this because it's all about laying the good foundations down. And with some athletes, the reason why they don't go up another level because you need to have the brutal truths. There's a good book by Jim Collins called Good to Great. I'm not sure if you read it. But it's amazing because it talks about why businesses don't do very, very well. And in terms of athletes, I liken them to a business that they want to win. And you need to make sure that they have longevity in the sport. And the only way of doing that is that you just need to be honest. Everyone in the team around an athlete needs to be honest. And every week, every month, think of ways to improve. So I just like to analyze everything. So this is how I've evolved as a therapist. It's not just that I'm there treating them hands-on and saying bye. I want to know everything. And I want to do my bit of the pie to get the athlete where they want to be. Because when I first see them, I want to know what they want to achieve. If it's a Ballon d'Or in football, if it's winning an Olympic gold medal, or winning anything in a given sport. So that is the vision at the end. And I want to do my bit to make sure that you achieve that.
How much of a role does ego play in this? Because I guess in a competitive arena, ego is the thing that can drive you forwards and win you medals. And you need to play the politics of your organization, your team, all that fun stuff. But equally, ego could be the biggest barrier to you treating yourself like a business or an ecosystem. Because like you've said, if we look at Elise, then he's got a team around him, but he needs to abandon his ego enough to not think he knows best, to trust in that person, trust in that person, trust in that person. And all of those people need to keep their ego under control so that the whole ecosystem can thrive and move I guess the asset forward in this case, not to dehumanize him, but that's if we're putting it in a business setting, kind of the way to look at things. So how have you seen the best athletes you've worked with balance that equation? Because you need to have an element of ego to be able to be competitive, but you also need to entirely abandon it to be able to free yourself up to get as much support as you can to develop yourself with experience of those around you.
That's a deep question. Ooh, the biggest thing. So you can have a good ego. So I'm going to talk about good ego and bad ego. A good ego is you don't say much, but you've got an ego in your presence. And with your actions, you might just say a one-liner, but you're humble about it. I think there's so many, so I won't mention any names, but there's some runners at the Olympics that you would guess. I'm not going to say any names that I've worked with in the past that they have an ego, but they've annoyed so many people with that ego. And it goes back to their team, because if you're going on a tangent, off on a tangent, not on the straight and narrow, and you're basically going and you don't have anyone in your team that's telling you, James, you're just going to be careful with your words. Or if you keep on doing this, people are not going to like it. It doesn't represent you. So I think ego gets out of hand when you don't have a good number two or a good person or team around you saying that, like, you've got to be careful with your words or your actions. And it can just be like, if you're sulking because you haven't got picked, it doesn't come across very, very, very good. But even at a high level, some of these athletes have yes people around them that don't have the best interests of that player. I think they might just have the interest of making money off that player or to be seen with that player. Well, I hope I've answered your question there.
I guess the only element is if you've had an experience of athletes giving resistance to a wider support team. Because I think if you come in and ask for their vision board, you ask them to map out the whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
Some of them might go, well, aren't you just the guy that's meant to put your hand on my knee and make me feel better and then go away?
Yeah.
And that's not me meaning to.
But you are right.
Value in that way. But
yeah.
you know what I mean? It's young athletes, especially ones I've met. They're either very. I don't want to generalize, but I guess I'd almost categorize them in two ways. The ones that I've met is think they're God's gift and have confidence and ability that can carry them forwards, and that will either make or break them, or they have ability but they're lacking in confidence. They're a little bit anxious about their performance. They need constant validation to feel like they're pulling their weight and doing what they need to do, which again can move them forward, but it means they have probably a few more hurdles to overcome to really unlock consistent output when they're being measured.
Yeah.
And the latter, I'd imagine, are much, much easier to work with, but will take more work. Whereas I can imagine the former are much, much harder to get over the line. But then once you've got their buy-in, you can really make them stratospheric, if that all makes sense.
Yeah. So sport is a complicated thing, and that's why I love it. And to answer your question, athletes are at different stages. So you would get athletes from the word go that will fully get it. You get athletes that would be like, okay, I love the treatment side. I love the technical side that I need, but why do I need to speak to like somebody? So like when you are approaching somebody and telling them what they need to do, that it's a skill. So first of all, you have to gain trust and credibility that this person is going to accept you to be part of the team. And then they have to see and trust that if you go through my process of doing things, that you're going to get to the top. So as I said, everyone has their strengths and weaknesses and their talents, and understanding why you don't need to have that ecosystem of people around you. And the crazy thing too, people might have the right ecosystem, but they don't know when to turn it on when it matters. So I've got loads of athletes that do all the right things and they invest in their bodies. But when it comes to the moment where they need to execute to highly perform, they can't really do it. And it goes again, and then and again, you've got people that don't have the ecosystem, that they are fresh. They don't have anything there, but they know when to turn it on. You know? But it will get to a stage where maybe that person, they can't do it in a consistent way for 15 years. They might climb the Mount Everest and not know how to shoot to the moon, you know? That's why there is a complexity to it that needs to be explored. But I do think that everyone needs an ecosystem, but you can't be direct with everybody. You need to like have the coaching ability to understand that person and get them on side slowly, if that's the best way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think the challenge in sport has always been having athletes understand how much of an impact their mental well-being can have on their performance as well as their physical well-being. So given that you're predominantly physical focused, obviously I'll ask them questions about what direction they want to go. How do they blast past Everest to the moon? But you're also in the ecosystem. Is there a discrepancy? Is there a difference between, in this day and age, an athlete's openness to viewing their psychology in the same way they view their physicality? Or is there still more work to be done?
Very deep question again, which I love. I think the special thing in my job, because I get feedback from my clients. So most of my clients now, they don't only come to me because I'm giving them treatment and making them feel good. They come to me now because I'm somebody that can listen to how they feel. Because you have to think that they're in a world that they don't open up to anybody because they're worried about they might use it for their own gain. They might try to make them look bad, you know. So I'm there and I listen. And if they open their door to have a mindset coach or someone that can work on the psychology in that team of trust, we all talk about it. and we just move forward and we grow. That's why, seriously, I didn't know that I had that effect on people who I see, because they like love being around me as a person, that there's trust that they can be themselves. And it's confidential too, as well.
Do you think more and more athletes are starting to have trust in those around them than in the past? Do you think the narrative's moving things forwards, and the awareness of the impact of psychology, their mental health, not just on their own well-being, but on their actual performance on the pitch, in the gym, and whatever it might be, is the tide turning? Or is there still a lot of resistance because of the fear that they might get dropped, or the fear that a teammate might use it against them, or the fear that a coach with silver hair might think, oh, that makes you weak, you're a bad player, you're not getting picked anymore, or something like that? Do you think things are moving in the right direction as a whole?
I think that there needs to be education still. So I think the tide is moving, but it's moving slowly. I feel that not all athletes are investing in themselves, which I think they need to. And most importantly, I don't think that many players are actually happy, because they're always keeping up with appearances and they're worried about what people think of them. The effect of social media is crazy. There are some players that get abused every single day, saying like, "Oh, you played awful," swearing, and like it's terrible. So and
then the following week they can be their hero.
Exactly,
it's crazy.
Yeah.
Football is the worst for that, in my opinion. It's so pendulum swinging. Manager's lost one game, get rid of him.
Yeah.
Wins the next game, best manager we've ever had. You're like, hang on.
Yeah.
You just got to shut it out.
But the thing is, though, many athletes are different. So I love pressure. I just love it when someone says I can't do something. And I've got athletes that think the same way too. But then again, there are athletes that if someone says something, they take it personal. So you need to adapt to that athlete and build a good hub around them to ensure them that this is just noise, just focus on the main task, focus on the main thing, and you'll be okay.
What sport have you enjoyed working in most?
Do you know something? So me, the origins of James, I used to be a sprinter, and Linford Christie was my hero, and I couldn't make it as an athlete because I got injured. And that affected me a lot. So I lost my purpose in life, because this is what I was meant to do. So me having an injury, I tore my quad, so my rectus femoris muscle, and I didn't have much knowledge about how the body worked. I had a surgery that I didn't need. And when I came back, every time I came up front of blocks, I would tear my muscle. So I lost that capacity to fully express myself through movement. So I needed a new vision, a new purpose, which was to be a therapist. So I had that tunnel vision that I was going to go to the Olympics and represent my country as an osteopath. And at that time, there weren't many osteopaths working, because physios dominate working in sports. But I just had the drive. I was so obsessed. I cried over it. I had blood through it. You know, I just made it happen. And then I've got even more of a passion now. So when I worked with 100-meter runners, I just loved to just see them as Formula One cars. And I was the engineer. So I would watch the way how they would move, look at their drills. They'd be back on the table and I would treat. And I just had a plan, because I just wanted an athlete to run under 10 seconds being the men, under 11 seconds being women. And I made that happen. So I get more of a kick when I'm in the warm-up area, and you're looking at the other coaches, you're looking at the other therapists, and you're looking at the athlete, and you're just saying your last words to the athletes just before they go and that race. And you see them on the big screen, and you watch them race and execute. There's no better feeling than that. And then switching to any sport, so in football, to watch somebody go from no one knowing who they are to being a superstar, and you might be in a pub or somewhere and no one knows that you know that person, then you hear them talking about that person. Like, there is no better feeling than that.
So I guess the short answer is athletics, because you get to live vicariously through other 100-meter sprinters. But the broader answer, I guess, is the journey of watching an athlete develop and excel in their sport that if you could package it up, that's what you are driven by now.
And I'm driven by somebody that has lost everything. So athletes can have highs and lows, but if someone's been at the top and they've crumbled down, and then everyone's written them off, and then when you start working with that player or athlete, and you get them back to the top, that is the best feeling. Seriously,
yeah, I can imagine.
I love it.
I can imagine. Is there an example of that? I know you're not naming names on some things, but are there any examples that spring to mind that really stand out to you?
Do you know something? So I can name someone. Perry Shakes Drayton. She's a good friend of mine. So she doesn't run anymore, but she was such a highly talented athlete in the 4 hurdles. Then she had an awful knee injury. She lost all her funding. But she was the face of track and field in this country at a certain time. And I think that the system let her down. And with her coach and with myself, and Perry made her own ecosystem. So she took hold of her doing well. And we started from 0 and we went back to 100, and she was able to make the team again, and she won a medal. And then when you're on this journey, you get closer to a person because you understand everything, what they want to achieve. You see them in a vulnerable place, and you just watch them do very, very well. Then you can look back and say that I was part of that team.
Yeah, yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. How did you come to work with David Beckham?
Do you know something? I don't want to get emotional because that guy is one of the nicest guys ever. People say that you shouldn't meet your heroes. That's garbage. That's, when I was young, when he scored from the halfway line, oh man, that just made me just to go to the park and just want to do that, and
But again, go back to what you said, the abuse he experienced was about as high as it ever could have been, really.
Yeah.
There was one specific incident, wasn't there? Was it a free kick he missed, or there was something?
It's when he got a red card in the World Cup '98. Yeah, but it's the same thing. Is that when someone is mentally and physically strong as David Beckham, you just ignore the noise and you keep on going. So it was through. So I managed to start treating David Beckham through a good friend of mine, Needham Holmes. And normally the thing about me, I never get starstruck or nothing. So when I found out that I was seeing him, I was of course, really happy. I was thinking this is going to be great. But the thing about me, when I'm in a room, it doesn't matter who it is. I'm as focused, and I just want to gain trust in the first moment through my hands and know that I'm not here because you're famous. I am here because I want to help you as a person. And I think he saw that early on. And I'm so proud that he wanted to be part of my book, and if he needs me any time to give treatment, I would drop anything to go and see him because he didn't have to do that. And that just shows the type of person that he is.
Were there any major breakthroughs you had with him in his career whilst working with him? Were there any moments that he was sort of on the brink? Because I can't think back to... I don't think his career was riddled with injury, but you might have helped make that the case. So along the way, what did you focus on?
So I treated him afterwards.
Okay,
yeah, but the thing with David, he's very fit and healthy, so he trains hard, and he's a good business person. It's the good thing about me that I meet so many amazing people, and with David, it's his presence and how kind that he is, and he's built a good ecosystem of people that can just take him to another level. So being around these people, because I think this is a good teaching here, is that we have to be careful who's in our space, because you need someone to be a beacon of light in our life to help us to go up another level, because everyone has dreams, whether it's big or small. So when you're around people and you see an example of how someone can achieve something great, and then just have that innovative mind to just get better and better. So I'm fortunate in a way that I'm around these superstars that I can see it firsthand. And that's what led me to write a book, or even being on this podcast now. And facing fears, because you look at me, many people don't understand, but I had an awful stammer when I was young, and I still have one now, and it affects me. And with having a good ecosystem around me, I had to face this head on, using the ice bath again. One of the visions that I had is that you need to not be hard on yourself. You are unique and you are different to anyone else. If you stammer, it doesn't matter. People just want to hear your message and see your example and learn from it. So with doing a book, for the first time in years, I went to seek help. Like I joined a group for over a year with people that had a similar stammer. Because my stammer is a covert stammer, meaning that I might be speaking clearly now, but I will be avoiding words. But there might be a time that I have to say a word, and then all of a sudden I start to stammer. So mine are R words and S words. But for many years, people didn't understand. They were saying, James, you okay? You don't have a stammer. But for the first time, I joined this group and people had similar stammers. There were ones that had the overt stammers, which was that you can't get any words out and that it takes a long, long time. And that's what led me to be a patron for the company Stammer. So it's amazing how you face your fears and you achieve something and it touches other people's lives and you can do charity work. It's just amazing.
How much did writing your first book help you to better express your message? Because I can imagine that, I might be wrong here, but if a stammer has been something that's limited confidence in a speaking capacity for a long period of your life, I know you've tackled it head on recently,
yeah.
But writing your first book, was there a noticeable difference in your ability to convey your message because it was going down on paper, on a keyboard, whatever it was, versus if somebody said, James, go? Did you discover more about your message? Did you learn stuff about yourself because you didn't have that? It's neurological, isn't it, a stammer? I think whatever the limitation was, essentially, was getting it down onto paper. Was that a really rewarding experience in and of itself?
I think writing it down on paper, it made me see there's different stages how I got to be at this point, because I just kept on going. I kept on going. And I didn't kind of register that, oh, flip, it must have been an impact on me that I got injured at an early age. And then having a stammer, it must have been really bad, Did it get worse with the injury and the sort of identity that went around that? Were there certain external factors that affected it? No, so I've had a stammer since I was 6, and it's improved a lot. So when I was 6, it was evident. You can really see that I had a stammer. But it was reading. I couldn't read. I couldn't read out loud. But now I can, So over the years, it has got better. But going on this course, I got into bad habits with avoiding words or avoiding doing a podcast or speaking. But actually, writing a book was therapeutic. It was something that I said, I'm so glad that I'm doing this. So as I said, I love pressure. So I loved basically writing everything down because I had 3 months to do it. So I wrote 90,000 words in 3 months. And it was so tricky to merge anatomy to layman terms because I didn't want a book to be overcomplicated where everyone's like, oh, flip, it's like being back at school now. I wanted a book that was simple but effective. So having takeaways that people can do. I think the hardest thing for me, if I'm honest, was doing the Audible version. That was tough. That was so tough.
I can imagine.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
Because you had to be clear, you had to be articulate, and that because normally people find it hard anyway, to do it. But so for a week, I had to say every word, and you had to go over words. It was intense.
How did you feel boxing that off? Was that a real sense of achievement for you, or was it just something that had to be done? Because I hope you took a moment to be proud about that. I assume, is that somebody at your door?
Yeah, ring. Sorry, a package. I don't know what the package is.
All good.
All good. Can you say the question again? Because I was just
essentially
looking at the guy
just
coming
if there's a was there a sense of achievement when you actually got to the end of reading out the Audible, or had you got used to the improvement by that point? Because I hope, again, I think put it in context is the amount of progress that's been made given the sort of timeline you've just covered.
Yeah.
That's massive. Very, very cool.
It was hard. It was hard, and it was a sense of achievement. I think the thing with me that improved is that I was so hard on myself. Because the old James, even with this talk, I would go back when this is finished, and I'll be like, "Oh, flick! I like muttered on a couple of words, or I did this. I feel really bad. I wish I can do it again, but I don't have that anymore because it's me,
Yep.
you know. And I'm not trying to be different. This is me. This is in my DNA. So
Life's easier that way, isn't it?
Exactly.
Being yourself.
Yeah.
It's much easier.
It's still at best, you know, because we all have things that we struggle with. But the thing with me now is that I give talks now, which is crazy, because even 2 years ago, I wouldn't imagine going to give talks and be paid to be giving talks, because I would have thought, who wants to listen to me, you know? So I've turned a weakness into a strength, even though I still have battles with it, but that's my journey. And I'm proud of that.
Awesome. Very cool to hear. Very cool to hear. And I think the real crux of the matter there is just, like you said, practically assessing your fears. Very similar to a lot of the messages in your book, I'm sure, just translated to a different thing, is practically assess your fears and try and come up with some sort of actionable plan to be able to make progress forwards.
Yeah.
And then you might accidentally find yourself overcoming those fears along the way, which is a very cool thing.
And I think
you're only going to do that if you take the first step.
And I think this is a big thing. So in New York, I was working with a singer that's done really, really well. And she had a fear of her lower back pain. So in the 5 days of me being there, once again, I had to gain trust. I had to show her an ecosystem that I want her to do. And I said to her, start to move, because she was scared of doing a sequence of dance. And I was trying to tell her, it's okay. Just do it in small steps. So I told her, let's make this a drill, because you have to do this when you're on stage. Then I said to her that you need to start stretching, because she didn't stretch when she went on the shows, and she did loads of tours. So I tried to build a plan for her, saying, if you follow these steps, you're going to be okay. And by the end of the 5th day, she had confidence. She was able to go straight into the dance and not feel that something's going to get sharp in her back. So it was education. It was trust. It was telling her that build the fundamentals first before going in for the top thing, as you said. And it was good that her whole team was there so they could see. And that's why I love my job. So I was on the flight thinking, this is good, that this was a team effort here, that I did my bit of the pie, and hopefully she can move forwards.
Awesome. Awesome. Lower back pain, as you just mentioned, is probably the most prevalent and standard fear or niggle that people have to deal with in the modern world. So if you could give anyone listening a few things to consider when it comes to managing their back pain, that I'm sure you develop in much more detail in the book, of course.
Yeah.
What would you tell them? I
think it's trying to establish what their pain is. So it's very important to find out what makes it worse, what makes it better. So I think understanding how your spine works, how the tissues around the spine works. So that the normal thing, if you're getting a sharp pain going down your leg, can be a possibility that it's affecting your nerve. If you've got an ache and it's just a general ache there, and it gets better with putting heat on, it's probably a muscle. If you've got pain, if you're bending down and you get a sharp pain, and you've got pain going down your leg, it's probably a disc in between your vertebrae. If you've got pain and you're twisting and you're leaning backwards, it's probably a joint, you know? So there's different types of things, which I talk about in a book, and I make it as simple as possible. But I think try and move, and if it hurts, jot it down and go and speak to a practitioner or somebody that can give you the best advice. But as I said, there's loads of tools out there now, so you can use your own hands and rub an area and try and test it. So it's kind of like a trial and error in a safe zone, which many people do not do. Many people just think, oh no, I'm in pain, I'm just going to sit down here, or they just ignore it and do the same action, and that causes pain. So I think knowledge is the best thing, and that's what I try to explain in my book. And then kind of thinking of things that you can do as a self-management and when you need to like find the help. So it's finding out if things are a red flag. And one of the red flags, if it's a constant pain and painkillers are not working and it's just getting worse and worse, you need help, you know. If you've got lower back pain and you're getting pain down your legs, in both legs, you lose the ability to go to the toilet. So a change in your bowel habits, pain when you're going to have a number one, weeing, that's a red flag. So definitely get that seen too.
I think the tendency is it's not to get complacent. I think time is the most valuable tool when it comes to short-term injury management and recovery.
Yeah.
The way I always try and look at things is if time doesn't fix it, you probably need to see somebody. Or you probably need to better understand what is causing it. I think back to my mum, who the amount of times that she's done her back gardening.
Oh boy.
And then can't really do anything for a couple of days. Time will sort of improve it. But then again, we've had the discussion on, well, look, if this keeps happening, then there's probably some sort of mobility related issue that could be adhered to better by doing X, Y, and Z. But then the actual actionable next steps to be able to implement that and do that consistently over time to therefore try and prevent gardening being the thing that causes her issue at her back, that's the hard bit. And I think that's where people really struggle in the modern world because we're all so busy and there's so many things going on.
But the thing is, that's one of the main hobbies that triggers back pain. And it's that analogy again, we have to see ourselves as athletes. So it might sound funny saying it, but we need to warm up before we do the gardening. Because when you think about it, you're bending down, you're twisting in a weird way, and you're there for a long time. And most people don't have breaks. So it's going back to that Formula One car. You need to have a break, stretch out, and then get back to it. And I always say to patients and my mom, I always say, try and get people to do the main bit of the garden if you can, or get help to like do it. And then you just do the little things, or kind of think that you don't need to do hours and hours in a day. Break it down. Have those breaks, stretch out, you know, or just like an athlete or someone doing a marathon, try and get a massage just before doing the try and get a massage just before doing the gardening. Instead of just going without doing no prep work and doing a task that's just going to put so much force or pressure on your body.
I wouldn't get under a barbell unless I'd mobilized my hips and loosened off my hip flexors and things. So, and then the flip side of that is, whilst I have quite a high work capacity with squatting under a barbell, there is a point where if you ask me to repeatedly do it for hours, I would just fold because of fatigue. And I think that's where a lot of people lack the understanding of the critical thought of an athlete, perhaps, whereby, for example, my mum's gardening work capacity probably has a pretty clear ceiling because fatigue will kick in once you've been bent over or moving in a certain way for so long, where you're then going to be compromised. And it's not just grit and determination that will see you through it. You're then kind of exposed. So I think that's where general physical preparedness training, having an aerobic base, having some sort of strength base, making sure that you understand biomechanics for the average person is so much more valuable than I think people give it credit for. Because, I think it's a really good way of thinking about how you exist is treat yourself like an athlete or think like an athlete, because it forces you to audit the things that you have control over in your own life. I think a lot of people blame pain on things out with their control, when more often than not, I think they have more control over it than they might give themselves credit for.
You've raised some good points there, but going back to elite athletes, the best coaches know how to train an athlete in a smart way. So for like many years, I've treated members of the England rugby team, and I won't mention coaches or nothing, but there were so many times where athletes would say that we overtrained, especially the Tokyo World Cup. Going into the final against South Africa, there were so many athletes that were injured. So like there's a skill to like taper. And what I mean by taper is to slowly reduce the intensity of training to make sure that an athlete's able to fully perform when it matters. So there were so many England rugby players that were tired, and so many players that didn't even make it to the final because they got hurt. I got flu. So a rugby player flew me in just before the semi-final because he had a calf tear. So I had to see him twice a day leading up to the final. So he managed to like get through to play in the final. But I think the third minute he got knocked out, so he had to come off. So all that week, but the thing with that managed to get him fit for the final. But the reason why I'm saying this is that don't overtrain. Be smart in your training.
Working hard is a requirement, but working smart is more sustainable, especially when it comes to pushing top end. And that applies to a business setting, that applies to a financial setting. Essentially, just working 18 hours a day and not sleeping enough is not going to yield as good results as using 12 hours a day more efficiently.
And this is key,
there's
right?
a real tendency that people have to just think, I need to be doing more than the person next to me, otherwise I'm not working hard enough, especially if you're ambitious and driven.
And you've got to think, there's so many athletes that have the same talent. So they're on a level ground, but the difference is the people that go up, they have the best recovery, the best team that can tell them all the stuff that they need to hear. So they don't get exposed when it matters. They're fully prepped. So they're 5 steps ahead.
Great way of looking at life, whatever level of performance you're looking to achieve. James, it's been an absolute pleasure. Tell us everything that we need to know about your book.
It's a vital thing because it's going to give you the understanding about your body. It's going to give you tools that you can do back at home, which everyone needs. And it's going to tell you that you need to take a couple of steps backwards and be kind to your body. Do something that brings joy to your body.
And it's available as of today in major retailers, Amazon. Where would you like people to purchase it
from?
All
of the above.
All of the above. Awesome, awesome. But go to your local bookshop if you can in this day and age, is my biased suggestion. And any social media or website that you'd like people to head towards?
So my Instagram is James D Health and my website is jamesdhealth.com.
Fantastic. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. All the best with the book launch. An exciting day indeed.
Thank you very much.
And we will touch base very soon.
Thank you. All the best.